behind us. Now, this afternoon session, we will start with, together with Reidar Wasenius. And one thing that is actually uniting me and Reidar is our extremely Nordic names. So Rani and Reidar that track back in history a bit of a while. But without further ado, I'll let Reidar do a short introduction who he is and what he is here to do. But in short, he's going to change a bit how we think and how we do stuff. So super excited to hear more. Welcome.
Thank Ronny. Good day. Warmly welcome. We are all sharing a common language in Northern Europe and especially here in the Nordic region. And I've been fascinated by languages not just because of the name Reidar, but also as a student of languages for many years. And it's my job here now to actually help you make some completely new connections in your brains that you've never made before. And also, I believe, cut off some connections which are there unnecessarily. Both of these operations might momentarily be such that you don't necessarily like them. But if you have pen and paper ready, then during our small 30-minute session here together, I'll help you also train your brain, literally stretch your mind. And that's what I do as a personal brainer. And I've also written a book called The Personal Brainer together with neurobiologist Tiina Huttu. And I'm the Chief Creative Officer and also the Personal Brainer at Breaks Finland, a company that provides the world's best workplace breaks. We provide services for fearless organizations who want their people to feel well and do well. And particularly in these times of change, it's very important for us to be as flexible as possible mentally. And if we look at the topic of the entire day, here in a sense we have an overall picture of what we're looking at. Some of these flags are quite familiar to you in the Nordic context. Some of those first ones up there, the English flag based on St. George's cross. According to legend, he was a soldier in the Roman army in the 300s. So about 1,700 years ago. And he was then venerated and sanctified and was especially important in the Crusades when people were riding throughout Europe to attack others in the Mediterranean region. So, of course, this cross, as we know, as a Christian symbol, carries some baggage with it. Our Nordic cross is St. Philip's cross. According to legend, Saint Philippos in Greek, was one of the 12 apostles of Yeshua, or as the invaders called him, Jesus. And Saint Philip was crucified upside down on a cross, and he gave a very compelling sermon during his last moments and managed to get Bartholomew on another cross next to him freed, but Saint Philippos himself wanted not to be taken down, so he died on this cross upside down. Without going into all the necessary details, especially when we're building a Nordic brand, I think it's still important for us to be recognizing all this baggage and history we have, because only with full information in our mind, as adults taking full responsibility for everything we do we understand what we are talking about. So what I'm saying is that it's important not to shut our ears, eyes and mouths, but actually be open. And this is not always easy. That is why some of the sentences that came out of my mouth during the past 2 minutes might make you feel uncomfortable. Clearly, we need to be aware of this. And as a personal brainer, it's important, very important for me, of course, to help people stretch their mind, expand their thinking so that they're increasingly flexible instead of rigid or leaving out certain aspects of their lives or the planet. When I click now here, something actually happened here with the flag of Åland. There is another flag with the exact same proportions. And when I click here and move from the flag of Shetland, there is another flag which is almost identical, not quite. So when we look at our flags, it's very interesting to note that although we share a common history, we've selected many, many years ago, our ancestors have selected this cross as a symbol, we have each and every one of us in different countries wanted to be fiercely independent, even when we depend on each other and copy ideas from each other. This flag is the flag of the Swedish-speaking Finns. It has the exact same proportions as the flag of Finland, men det är för oss finlandssvenskar, vi som talar svenska i Finland. Then there is the flag of Denmark, oftast Dannebrog, which is, as most of us know, the oldest flag. And then we have a very young flag here, the flag of the Finns in Sweden, which has the same proportions as the flag of Åland. The fonts have jumped a little bit, but the proportions here on the Danish flag, if we scrap them, we note that the Norwegians wanted a flag which is a little bit longer. And then there was another small nation, Iceland. They wanted a flag which is even a little bit longer than that. So the proportions again are a little bit different. There are many who are wanting to join us during the past few years and even today. Over in the left-hand corner, we have South Uist, an island in the Scottish Hebrides, in the middle of the Atlantic. The flag below that is of Caithness, the northernmost tip of Scotland, as close to us up here as you can get on the British Isles. Then, you might not be aware of it, but in Estonia, the city of Pärnu has for a very long time had its own cross flag with exactly the kind of Nordic cross model that we have. Then we have Setomaa, which is the most beautiful in many people's eyes. It has a traditional folk embroidery pattern on the flag. The Karelians, with the black, red on green, is an unofficial flag. And then the Vepsians have been wanting also to stake their claim to be closer to us with the green flag with the blue and yellow cross. And this is something surprisingly few are aware of. And when you look at what the new Nordics mean, could mean or will be meaning, depending on how we look at the world, what we do, what new things we start doing today, and what some people have been doing for a few years already, we are actually in some ways bigger than you might think. And especially on the British Isles, there are many who are wanting to join us for historic reasons, because our ancestors went down there, they conquered, they pillaged. My name is Reidar. Mijn naam is Nordisk naam. Reidar. In English, raider. A person who went there and rode in, grabbed what he could, and left. In Old Norse, that Vikings used, it's Reidar, the man who goes in, raids, and pillages, and then runs out. And because of our ancestors who did stuff like this, in 2005, the traditional flag, which has been partially used on the Shetland Islands since '69, in 2005 became the official flag. They want to be closer to us culturally, historically they are, and also politically, geopolitically. Orkney Islands, part of Great Britain, they made this flag official in 2007. Caithness, that I already showed you, in the hands of the local people, 2016. And South Uist, that's how you pronounce it, Uist. There is also North Uist, 2017. And even more exotically from our northern perspective, Yorkshire West Riding, official flag, Barra, the island next to one of the islands in the Hebrides in 2017, very recently, and then Yorkshire West Riding in 2013, in the middle of England. So as we stretch our minds, let's also stretch our brains. And if you have pen and paper, start bringing them out. And we'll be doing some exercises with pen and paper as well. In our daily lives, it's important to be aware of things, as many examples have demonstrated that I've been talking about already. But it's important to be aware of our body. And clearly, of course, you are stretching your neck, your shoulders, your legs, your back several times a day when you realize what you need, for how long, in what direction. You decide, you control. It would be very silly of me to tell you to do it for a certain number of seconds in one direction and the other direction. No. You are in control. You are aware, and you do this by yourself, even when you're not being told every day, aren't you? We create structures in formation in our neural network. To memorize something is to create associations. To learn something, every moment you learn now and you store stuff here, you are being creative. The memory functionality of the human brain, the central nervous system, is not separated from the creativity. They are the one and the same in a neural network. So when we get these rigid structures, we can get by during our days, speaking languages, walking, talking, eating, driving, without being aware of it actively. And that's good, because then we get through our days spending as little time and energy, the two basic biological resources we have, as little time and energy as possible on thinking. You are thinking every day as little as possible. So to counteract this, we need more mental flexibility, not to become too rigid. The more flexible you are, the more innovative you are, the more clearly you can become aware of potential changes that you could do in your organization or your own daily life in terms of new products, services, organization, doing, etc. In other words, the more flexible you are instead of rigid, the more innovative you are, of course. Another thing growing out of mental flexibility is resilience. Your ability to renew yourself, to adapt to external changes, even if you're not, you don't have an inner fire to be really innovative as a person or in a company. Clearly, these huge changes we've gone through the past 12 months clearly indicate the need for resilience, the willingness and ability to change when changes are imposed upon you. So I have already been presenting you with some images, questions, and there will also be exercises during this brief session together. Let's start by crossing our fingers, talking about crosses and crossing. Now, this is a habit that you do, and you feel in a certain way. What happens if you switch your grip? Many people are not comfortable. They are out of their comfort zone because the pressure points, even the position of the wrists are different. How do you feel right now? Please remain seated like this and keep tasting and feeling. What does it feel and taste like in your hands? It's important to note that this has nothing to do with religion or politics or you being left or right-handed. It's just one of thousands of habits that you repeat every day. You repeat thousands of habits every day. Most of the things you do, most of your actions during any given day are repetitions. Not some habits you have. You are a set of habits. Another concrete example, which is easy just to illustrate like this in a live feed, if you cross your arms and you switch them. When I do this live in front of an audience, I often see many people switching 3 or 4 times their arms and not even being sure whether they actually switched them. So this is how deeply ingrained they are. Ihmiset ovat kaavoihin kangistuneita. People have really these kind of neural patterns that are, in this case, not dangerous necessarily, but if you don't change them, you will make your body into a corkscrew as you grow up being 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 something. Carrying the bag always on one side, always doing like this, it means that you are almost straight but not quite. And this can be physically actually damaging also to your body. Now what happens is, especially during childhood and adulthood, is that you're processing, in other words, learning and understanding new things, making sense of them. You're internalizing and crystallizing things. This is going on in your brain predominantly, mostly. Click. So from out there, you crystallize the core of your mind. The cravings, rules, attitudes, and habits, which are the toughest to change and the key to your mental stability. Unfortunately, of course, as you gather this intelligence, exactly in the same sense as business intelligence or a central intelligence agency does, you get rapidly actionable, crystallized intelligence. It means that you can go through your daily life using less time, less energy, just like you as an organism have processes. You as an organism have habits. An organization has processes. It helps create structural stability and inside your mind and your entire being, mental stability, of course. Sadly, it means that increasingly as the years go by, you are just identifying things, projecting onto others things, and trying to prove that you're right because this click is happening. In other words, you are just seeing what you have. You're identified. Du känner igen. You're feeling and sensing again and again and again what you have. Oh, I've seen this. Oh, you're personal. Oh, you have that color skin. Or you have that religion. You're from that country. Or you're that gender. Okay, I know how to treat you. And this, of course, can, as my very brief examples here show, even without going into specific examples, you immediately come to think of multiple examples why this is not so good, especially not in a changing world. So people are brainwashed by stuff like this. Multi-global corporations use advertising, repeatedly show beautiful smiling people, put way too much toothpaste on the toothbrush. We spit out 2/3 or 3/4 of the unused toothpaste and even spend time and energy with our hand to flush it down and tell our kids to do the same for years. Sometimes people ask me, well, who cares? I don't have the time and energy to think. Ja orkar inte tänka. En minä jaksa ajatella. Which is the scary part that the multi-global corporations are counting on, you not having the time and energy or inclination to think. So they make literally billions with a B of euros every year more as people use toothpaste more than unnecessary. Again, another pattern which very few people are aware of. We also have biases that need to be broken. In my job as a personal brainer, my colleagues and I, we provide breaks to help people break free from these and be more flexible. Another reason for the need of all of this are the kind of innate and learned biases we have. Our ancestors wanted to be in familiar surroundings with familiar faces, eating familiar foods, and that is of course why we are like we are, because those who repeated themselves as much as possible like robots or androids or replicants, they survived long enough to procreate and multiply. People who were careful, they multiplied. We have their genes, much more. Fortunately, we don't live in a world like this, but still there is pressure on us from other people around us to be predictable and reliable. Especially financial institutions have mathematical equations and formulas. They want to cluster you statistically. If you they want to know how many years have you been living with the same person in the same apartment and been in the same job, etc. The more predictable and boring like a robot you are, the better deal you get in loans and insurance, for instance. So clearly there is pressure on us. So we will just shortly pick out our pens and papers during the last minutes of our brief session here together. But at this stage, I kindly ask you to look at this, and during the next 20 seconds, alternate between the vase and faces. The vase and faces. Please do mental push-ups during the next 20 seconds, as many as you can. Probably you fixed your eyes on one point and did this. This is one of many tools you can use for brain training. This is a classical image. You've probably seen this or some version of it many times. But it's not just a toy or some curiosity. Just like that visual image asks you a question, what are you seeing? And can you be so big and flexible, stretched and mentally expansive that you can incorporate multiple seemingly, initially at least seemingly exclusive viewpoints in the same time in your mind? This is very useful in many professions. Similarly, this slightly more abstract question, do you have genes? It is a similar kind of question like the image we just watched. In a way, you can say you have genes in your everyday life. The fact, the biological scientific reality is that the genes have you. They built you. They are reconstructing you. They are repairing you. They are multiplying themselves. You are not multiplying your gene. There are trillions, not millions, billions, but trillions of genes every minute in your body copying themselves. And the fifth point, not only did they build you, reconstruct you, and maintain you, repair you, but they're multiplying themselves, and they existed most of them, almost all of them, millions of years before you even existed. Some new genes did not exist, and that is why you, as a vessel for these genes to duplicate themselves and remain into the future, are new ones. So again, this is not right or wrong, black or white, and there are other views as well. This is an example of an expansive mind, a flexible mind. You can change viewpoints or incorporate these in the same minute inside your mind. Next exercise, please change her direction. This is available publicly online. I won't go into this. Sometimes we can just, in a brain training exercise session, we can spend 15 minutes on just this one. It has multiple aspects. Again, superficially, simple, small image. But when you ask yourself, whom or what do you like? Vem och vad håller du av? Mistä tai kenestä pidät? All of these wordings reveal, they show us that when you say you want something, you like something, you want something you like, du håller av någonting eller någon, sinä pidät jostakin, you are trying to repeat yourself like a replicant, like an android. What makes you different from an android? That's an interesting question. Can you prove it? So, let's do some drawing. And if you're right-handed, please now use your left hand. If you're left-handed, use your right one. Please draw a circle. And once you've drawn one circle, please draw multiple circles in multiple positions of the paper. Already now, there are signals going through your cortex, the brain bark, the outer layer of your brain right now. So this is already increasing your mental flexibility in a minute, tiny little way. Now, if you draw a triangle, I know, having done this for many years, that most people will draw a triangle like this. Please draw a second triangle, which is oriented differently on the paper. Surprisingly often, it ends up being something like this. So please draw multiple triangles of varying sizes in different parts of the paper, in different orientations. These are small, silly, simple exercises. Just like push-ups, sit-ups, back exercises, pull-ups. Physical training is super easy in principle. They're not difficult. Mental exercises are equally easy, small exercises. The only question is, do you do something like this 2 or 3 times a week? Even just briefly. That's the only decisive thing here. Now, before you draw the square, please try to read my mind. What am I trying to send to you as thought waves now? What should you be thinking about and take into account as you draw this square? Before you draw it on your piece of paper. Exactly, yes. I saw multiple thought bubbles now. Plop, 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 plop. Please draw it so that it's not in congruence with the paper. Så det inte följer regelbundet pappret, että se ole sivujen mukainen. Now here's an example of how this kind of small, seemingly silly and simple change can be good business. Square melons are more easy to store, to transport, and you can even have them on shelves squarely. So there are logistical cost savings, but the price per kilogram is higher, bigger margin. Small, tiny example, what can you find in your daily life, in your organization, or at home? And finally, the last shape here, a pentagon, a 5-edge. And again, try to draw a 5-edge so that none of the edges of the pentagon are parallel to any of the edges of the paper. Might be more difficult than you think, especially with your weaker hand. Why does it say hashtag Islam? What are you thinking about? What are the associations you have? And can you move forward from that now as I continue, when I emphasize that I'm talking about Alhambra and other beautiful, fantastic places where I've been, where this kind of abstract geometrical Islamic art is prevalent and beautifully on display, like in some airports in certain countries. Absolutely fantastic. That's what I was thinking about, and I hope that's what you are thinking about, especially as we move on and are not stuck in the past. And finally, please redraw. This is the last drawing exercise. Please redraw all shapes, because there are patterns of patterns and different levels of patterns. And this is not philosophy or abstraction. You literally have more things to break in what you just did. You probably drew them all clockwise or counterclockwise. So again, my job has now been just to provide you with some examples of how you can and should catch yourself, catch others in your organization, in your family, above all yourself, developing yourself, evolving as a human being throughout your life, to catch yourself in the act of robotically repeating yourself unnecessarily. So these are just examples. There are more than 800 exercises like this. You could draw a cube, pyramids, other three-dimensional objects, of course. Write your name, write it upside down, write it mirrored, etc. These are all kinds of small exercises you can do just before a meeting where you're expected to come up with new thoughts and ideas. Be a valuable member of the meeting. Instead of sitting in your familiar position, in your familiar seat, this is my seat, with my coffee cup, with my coffee, this much milk, with familiar faces in a familiar room. If you really do your utmost to repeat yourself like a robot, and you're angry at life and others if you're not allowed to repeat yourself like a robot in the meeting room just before a meeting begins, what do you think is the probability you'll be able to contribute any kind of new thinking in that meeting? Very small. So please sit down in the seats of your colleagues, maybe even your boss, if you have courage. And take someone else's coffee cup. I warmly recommend that. It will start important discussions in your organization. I've been giving you images, questions, exercises during this very brief session together. There are lots of them. This is what a personal brainer does. I also help people strengthen their memory, do motivational training, decision-making training, learn to focus, etc. And we help people think new thoughts so that people can prove to themselves and others they are not replicants. This is an image from the by far best educational film on this topic, Blade Runner and its sequel. Explore for several hours what it really means to be human. How can you prove yourself or someone else if they ask, how do you know you're a human and not a robot? Super interesting, very deep and philosophical, but concrete at the same time. And this is my last slide. Please, this is just, with a tongue-in-cheek, shall we say, homework. You, among all of the other 99.9% things of everything you do every day being repetitions, one of those myriad of things is that you pull your pants on and take them off, and take shirts and jackets and blouses on and off with the other arm, one arm or one leg first. Please use the other leg or the other arm. Can you even stand without falling over? Or does your body, especially if you're closer and closer to your 40s, the risk age of being so rigid mentally and physically that you can't even get on a jacket or a shirt, or take off your pants or trousers, or take them off without falling over. This is not a joke, because many people cannot do it anymore. although they superficially look like fairly normal, sensible, adult human beings. This is how rigid we are. Among the Nordics, I think it's beautiful that we are here collaborating. We need lots of new thinking. We've done beautiful things in the past. Let's do new beautiful thinking and actions in the future. Thank you for the time.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Reidar. I think
Thanks.
the interesting part is here that you got now to raid our minds, and now I thought to give some back and also raid your mind a bit. So, what is your favorite part about the Nordic region?
Vi alle spreker samme tunge i alle lande. In Island, Shetland, Scotland, England, Friesland and the andre Duitse lande. And Nederlanden, Finland, Sverige, Norway, Denmark, and Färöer in west, and Ösel i Estland. That maker mig lycklig.
Mycket lycklig. Tack så mycket, Reidar. Thank you so much, Reidar. And next up, we'll have entrepreneur Peter Westerbacka join us at the same stage. So we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.